Well, good morning, everybody. I just want to welcome you to our third annual Pioneers in Law. This year, we're doing a women's summit instead of a women's breakfast. My name is Adugo Glenda Duru. I am on the HYLA board, and I'm also the co-chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and also the co-chair of the Pioneer in Law Summit. I'm co-chair with Agape Ogbonna, and I'll let him introduce himself if he would please.
Hi everyone, my name is Agape Ogbonna. I'm legal counsel for SThree, and as Glenda said, I am the co-chair for today's event. Yeah, that's it. Keep it short and sweet.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Glenda and Agape. We all appreciate this opportunity to present this panel to you guys. My name is Samira Bruno. I'll just be moderating the event. I am a partner in the Houston office of the firm Pillsbury, Winthrop, Shaw, Pittman. My practice involves insurance recovery work, so I represent policyholders and institutions in both giving them advice on insurance issues and representing them in disputed insurance claims. I do not represent insurance companies. I sue them, to be clear. And I'm just going to go ahead and go around and introduce our entire panel here. We have really a terrific panel today, starting with Samira Alimohammad. Samira is Vice President and General Counsel Americas for the leading international STEM recruitment company, SThree PLLC. She graduated from the University of Houston Law Center and has been practicing law for 17 years. The majority of Samira's legal career has been spent in-house, leading in-house teams and providing legal support on a broad range of corporate, employment, and commercial matters. Samira actually immigrated to the United States when she was 3 and is now a proud mother of 3, an 8-year-old boy and 5-year-old twin daughters. Next up on our panel, we have Nguyen. Professor Nguyen obtained her Bachelor of Science degree in Political Science from the University of Houston. She then obtained her law degree with honors from Thurgood Marshall School of Law. During law school, she served as a judicial clerk for the Texas First Court of Appeals. And today, Ms. Nguyen is the managing attorney of Nguyen Office PLLC, which has offices in Houston, Austin, and Belton, Texas. For the last 14 years, her growing law practice handles claims involving family law, criminal defense, and immigration law matters. And since 2016, she serves as the clinical law professor at Thurgood Marshall School of Law Immigration Legal Clinic. She's also the co-director of the LLM in Immigration and Naturalization Law degree program. Next up, we have Krystal Ramsey. Krystal is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Blank Rome, which is an AmLaw 100 law firm. She has 11 years of diversity, equity, and inclusion experience as a practitioner, consultant, coach, and trusted strategic advisor to corporate legal departments, law firms, nonprofits, and business leaders across the country. In her current role, she leads Blank Rome's DEI efforts firm-wide and reports to the CEO and COO. Krystal is responsible for developing, implementing, monitoring, and measuring progress of Blank Rome's DEI strategy and working collaboratively with firm management, the firm's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, affinity groups, and others. Krystal is also the executive director of the Downtown Group, which is a professional organization with more than 300 Black women attorney members throughout the greater Houston area. She earned her law degree from Texas Southern University's Thurgood Marshall School of Law as well. We have great representation of that school here today. Next up is the last person on our panel to be introduced is Tiffany Reedy. Tiffany has been employed with the Harris County Attorney's Office since May of 2014 and serves as managing counsel for the CPS, Elder, Disability, and Mental Health divisions. Tiffany previously worked as a regional attorney for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, where she advised and represented the department in child protective service matters and adult protective service matters for 6 years. She's been licensed attorney for over 19 years and has represented an array of clients, including 20th Century Television. Tiffany is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, incorporated since 1996. She earned her Bachelor of Arts in Criminal Justice from Sam Houston State University, graduating with distinction in 1998. And she earned her law degree from Texas Southern University's Thurgood Marshall School of Law with distinction in 2001. She's the mother of 1 daughter and committed to public service. So that's our panel, which is a really terrific group of people that we have today. So we're just going to dive on in. We have a couple categories of questions for our panelists. And we're going to start off with kind of, unfortunately, one of the first things that folks think about when we're thinking about diversity and inclusion, which is sort of discrimination from others. And to start off with that topic, we're going to go to V and ask, V, how have unconscious biases or discrimination impacted you in your career?
So I was thinking about that question over the last few days and wanting to highlight the more resonating experiences. I've been practicing now for 14 years. And of course, I'm very proud to be, one of the few Vietnamese American attorneys in the field. And, of course, going through different things, my last name being, Nguyen, right? And of course, when you see Nguyen once, you remember it forever, right? And it's like a Smith, as everyone says. And in the beginning of my career, I think that, coming out of, being a young attorney coming out of Thurgood, being a, Vietnamese American, being a woman, of course, people like to say, they think I'm younger than they think that I am because my hair is obviously really, really super black. But of course, I'm 43, not 23. But combining all those, variables together, I think the unconscious biases and discrimination as described, if a person hasn't interacted with a Vietnamese American or hasn't interacted with an Asian attorney overall or one from Thurgood Marshall, whatever it may be, that I think that the bias and discrimination is not displayed in bad faith. And I take that as not taking it personal, but instead wanting to educate them or being very proud of who I am. I think the first thing about unconscious bias and discrimination is knowing how to interact in a way that you don't take it personal. You understand that it comes unconsciously because maybe they just haven't been exposed to that. And the moment that they have that interaction with me, I take that as a lawyer, if it be my opposing counsel, if it be my judge, if it be my client, whoever I'm interacting with, that I give them some resonating experience with me. So then that way, moving forward, they wouldn't display that bias or discrimination to another attorney after me. And so at this 14th year of my practice now, I practice in Bell County. I don't know if anyone's from Bell County in the audience or on the panel. And of course, being from Houston, right? Because when you're from Houston, you go to a different county. There's always that apprehension that I have personally as an attorney that, well, are they going to treat me a little different because I'm not of the local area. I obviously stick out like a sore thumb. I'm like a peacock out here. But I have to say to you that practicing Bell County really showed me how to deal with unconscious bias and discrimination in a positive way, as opposed to taking it and being jaded about it, that instead being that peacock, if you will, allowed me to be even better at what I was, at what I do, doing family law in Bell County and knowing that I'm here to set a precedent. I am here to set an example as an Asian attorney to represent all bases, but particularly because being an Asian attorney, it attracts Asian clients. And with that being said, I have, if it's impacted my career in a more positive way, you would think that it would probably be the opposite. It could be, but instead I consciously made sure not to take things personal and just take each interaction as an educational experience mutually. Of course, now practicing, and if I'm in Bell County or Bexar County or Cameron County or anywhere in the state of Texas, that when they say, Miss Nguyen, good morning, what are you here for? I am always, my heart just is so in love with this idea of knowing that the judges are very conscious about saying my last name in the right way. Miss Nguyen, am I saying that right? Is it V Nguyen? Is it Vi Nguyen? But over time, I see what's happening. It's this positive rippling effect that the unconscious bias and discrimination that I experienced in the beginning of my career is starting to fade. And as a result of that, I take that in a positive way. Now, given there are times that I will send out an email, V Nguyen, and I get an email back that says, Mr. Nguyen, because they just might think I'm male as opposed to a female. And that may have a lot to do with the fact that Asians, stereotypically, our generation is that you become a doctor. Lawyers is not really, being a lawyer wasn't the first preference. My mother, of course, pushed me to be a lawyer to break the glass ceiling, but it appears that sometimes, and they apologize sincerely, obviously. So I get that more lately, but I don't take that personal. I actually use that to help me in my career, in helping to dispel the stereotype that comes with the unconscious bias and discrimination, if that answers a question.
Gotcha, yeah. And so it sounds like to the extent that it's had an impact on your career, you sort of worked to try to turn that to be as helpful to you in your career as possible, as
Yes,
opposed
ma'am.
to detriment. Have you have any tips for other attorneys on dealing with and confronting sort of microaggressions, something that may be a little less unconscious or a little less trying to be the positive route?
I'm a professor at Thurgood Marshall, and of course, we're one of the most diverse schools in the country. I think that's a great stage, and it's a great attraction for, you know, students from all walks of life, all ethnic, cultural backgrounds. And of course, there are times that they will call me privately, and, you know, there's a certain feeling, you know, being young, being, you know, or being of a certain culture, or being of a certain religious background. So they'll tell me the stories that they've gone through, and they'll ask me, if you were me, what would you do? Or if you were in me, where did this come from? How do I deal with this? You know, and it affects them, you know, in their capability or wanting to make sure that they respond in a way that's not going to backfire. And my tip to anyone who is going through that, whether they're a practicing attorney or a student, or is that not to take it personal. It doesn't come from a place of malice, but it might come from a place of lack of knowledge. And I think that it's almost inevitable that we live in a world that we come from, it's just different walks of life. Everybody comes of different backgrounds. And so with that being said, my tip is to don't take it personal. Don't be very conscious about who you represent too. If it's someone from a South Asian community, or someone from a Middle Eastern community, or someone that comes from a religious background, or whatever it may be, that to reflect and exude a sense of empathy, respect, deference. So meaning, like, if someone comes at you aggressively, you don't have to come at them in that same manner, but you can be firm with them, and you can put them in their place and say, okay, let's just, you know, you need to know first, you need to respect how you speak to me. Let's just start off on the right tone, the right footing, because I think that that's a way for them just to test you. And then you just have to take control of the situation. And then in the end, they always end up apologizing. Maybe it just comes from a place of being, again, lack of knowledge. But I think that at the end of the day, we should all be embracing of everybody's culture and being very sensitive about people's customs, about people's beliefs, and not being judgmental of how they feel. You know, there's a base to that. There's an underlying pinning as to why a person feels that way. And I always believe if someone's being aggressive towards me, it may be that they're just having a bad day. It may be because it's just a facade or a bravado, you know? And so with that being said, I say, you know, help educate that person and understand why they're being aggressive, and help educate them that it doesn't need to be that way. So those are my tips that helps me through my career.
Thank you. And of course, sometimes we're not really dealing with others' reactions to us, but sort of how we're trying to deal personally with sort of our own position or our own insecurities. And that's kind of goes into the next sort of general topic on, you know, concepts of self-awareness in your career. And to start off with, Samira, have you struggled with self-promotion in the workplace? And if so, how have you managed to deal with that?
So yes. A resounding yes. I have, and sometimes I still struggle with self-promotion. It just honestly makes me so uncomfortable, whether it's in a forum like this, listening to my own bio, or during a performance review or a job interview, you know, times when it's so important to highlight your achievements. I think a big part of it is the way I was raised as well, right? I remember my mother always telling me, oh, we don't boast, we don't talk about ourselves, let others see your achievements and they'll see how great you are. You don't need to talk about them. You don't need to talk about yourself. And so part of me still kind of believes that, but the other part of me has also lived life. I'm now old enough and I've had further, you know, I've progressed in my career where I know, you know what? I do have to stand up for myself. I do have to be my own champion. And so, you know, it's funny because I was doing some research and there was a recent National Bureau of Economic Research working paper that said that women consistently rated their performance on a test lower than men, even though both groups had the same average score. And even knowing that employers would use their self-evaluation to decide whether to hire them and what to pay them. So clearly, even research shows that women are just uncomfortable with self-promoting. And so over the course of my career, I've been very fortunate to have some great mentors and allies, people that have given me the confidence to self-promote. It just doesn't come naturally to me. Most recently, I had to fight for my latest promotion. It took over a year to get it, but I was persistent, data-driven, and then eventually did get my promotion. So the one tool I try to use a lot is data, because data doesn't lie. It can be manipulated, but it doesn't lie, right? And it takes the focus off of me, which is a part I'm comfortable with, and I use numbers and data to show, okay, here are the achievements. So the focus is on the achievements, not so much on me. And so that's one of the tools I found that's really helpful for me to kind of work on the self-promotion bit.
Great. No, that is extremely helpful. And Krystal, sort of a follow-up question on that, or a similar question. How has the way that you navigate power structures in the workplace changed as you've progressed in your career?
Well, first, I just want to say, Samira, I love your approach about branding and data, because those are like my middle names. And then before I answer the question, I just want to say, thanks to HYLA, to Glenda, to Agape, to Christina, and to Tamara for having me and on this powerhouse panel this morning. But to answer your question, it's pretty much been the same way that I have dealt with power structures throughout my career. And there's really been three things that I've done. For one, before I go into those three things, I take a very people-centric approach. I often tell people I may be in the legal industry, but I'm in the people business. And a CEO once told me that, people want to work with, and they will consistently work with people that they enjoy working with. And so I've definitely taken that to heart and applied it throughout my career. So the first thing I do is I personalize my connections. And what I mean by that is that if there is a leader or if there is a rainmaker that I want to meet, I reach out to get to know them on a personal basis. And I'll give a story about that in a minute. But I think often, especially when you're a young lawyer, and even more so a young woman lawyer, you often feel that leaders are intimidating or untouchable or almost these mythical figures that, you're not at the current level to talk to them yet. And that's just not true. And often they are willing to do so. And so when I first, I am the former general counsel of Music World Entertainment. And for that job, before I even started, and I actually started as commercial counsel there, but I met the CEO and the COO at a nonprofit event. They were standing off to the side talking to each other, and I went over, introduced myself, and we started to talk about our shared passion of music. It had nothing to do with me wanting to work in Music World, even though I did want to work there. But it was just a personal, interaction over something that we both, enjoy. And a few weeks later, I was offered a job opportunity. So it goes to show how when you really personalize the connections, what the return can be. So that's one thing. The second thing is that I go in and I identify a problem and I solve it. Right. And I'm proactive about that. I don't wait for someone to say, okay, here's the issue. Can you help me with it? And an example for that is when I went into Fulbright, I was doing business development. Now I took a pivot in my career. This was after Music World, and I was guns blazing because I came in off this, being general counsel at Music World. And I was like, oh, I see all these issues. I have all these ideas. And so there were these three guys that they called the three kings, and they were really just the three department heads. One was over litigation, one was over corporate, one was over IP. And there were, issues going on within each department. And I pretty much was like, okay, I have some ideas I want to share with them. So I invited them, to a meeting, had a plan. Here are some of the ideas that I have, and let's talk it over. Of course, they didn't apply those, ideas right away, but it definitely kept me on their mind. And when they did have some things that they wanted to have me work on, they called me, and I was front of mind. So that's another thing that I have continued to do throughout my career. And lastly, you need to showcase your value and really what sets you apart. And this may seem like a very small thing, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. And that is when I was at Fulbright, you have your profile pictures on the website, right? And most people, we have this demure, look in our pictures. And I wore this red lipstick, Ruby Woo from MAC. in my profile picture. And I need to find that picture and use it again because I was looking pretty cute. And, you know, a number of people would call and say, what are you doing with this red lipstick on, you know, with your firm profile picture? And so, but one of those calls was our managing partner at the time, Linda Addison, you know, this big wig in New York. She calls me and I think, oh Lord, I'm in trouble. But she was like, what is the name of that lipstick you have on in your picture? And I tell her it's Ruby Woo. And, you know, we start this conversation, nothing really about practice or anything like that, really more just about makeup. But again, when she had a major project that she needed someone to work on, I was front of mind. And so it really, you know, going back to what I said in the beginning of the people-centric approach, it doesn't always have to be about the technical side of things, about the law, about the business. It's really about making that connection. And I've done that, and it has helped me to be successful throughout my career when it comes to dealing with, you know, the powers that be.
That's great. That's incredibly helpful advice. This is a little bit of a side note, sorry. We're asked to announce the CLE course number a couple of times during the presentation. So this is gonna be the first time, but if you stick through to the end, you get the whole hour. It's 174-111-214, and it's also in the chat box. Thank you, Krystal. So on a similar vein, Tiffany, are there any mistakes that you made in attempting to navigate the career ladder as a woman that you would advise women in an earlier phase of their career against doing? Oh no, there you go.
I'm on mute. I'm sitting over here smiling because Krystal mentions Ruby Woo, and I have on Ruby Woo today. It's my favorite. So yes, there were many things that I could talk about, but since we have a limited time frame, I'm going to mention the one that is most reflective, and it's something that that once I identified it, it just changed my life in general, and also changed my career. And that was living up to a standard of what I thought a lawyer was. That was not my standard. It was a standard that was preset by, I don't know, television, by some other person. When I graduated from law school, everybody wanted a big firm job, right? And everybody was going to those multiple interview sessions for these big firm jobs. And I am chatty. I'm kind of like Krystal. I like people, I talk a lot. And at the time, I have this baby in my belly that I am interviewing with, right? And people couldn't say, hey, we don't want to hire you because you're pregnant, lady. And in my brain, I put a thought of what success looked like and put it there and try to strive towards that goal. And that wasn't who Tiffany was, right? Tiffany is somebody who likes people, who likes to help, who probably in private practice would be very broke because, you know, people can't pay me. That's okay. I'm going to help you anyway, right? I thought that that person was a failure. And so I kept striving to meet this unattainable goal, which led me to firms that were very toxic. And it led me to business situations that were very toxic. And it wasn't until I shed that thought of what success looked like, what I thought a successful lawyer looked like, that I then began to look at opportunities for what they were. And there were opportunities for growth and to do things differently. And it led me to child welfare, and it led me to, you know, be this crazy person in child welfare that I am, and with the passion that I have. And I think if young people, not just young women, are open to the vast array of professional opportunities that we can avail ourselves to as lawyers, that if we get out of that LA law thinking, right, the LA law TV show, or, you know, or the practice TV show that you got to wear this power suit and these nice heels, and is what I thought being a lawyer was, you know, showing up at a really nice office every day, making a whole lot of money, and driving a really nice car and having a super cute boyfriend, right? Because that's what I saw on television. And when I wasn't able to attain that, then I just began to accept how people wanted to treat me, because I wanted to be in places that probably were not good for me. And the spaces that I realized were good for me were not spaces that looked like the idea that I had in my head. So the biggest mistake I made was not having a realistic view of the practice and a realistic view of what I wanted. I let someone else shape what I wanted. And when I decided what I wanted, my career changed, my life goals changed, how I saw things changed, and it's been revolutionary.
Thank you. That's a really terrific way of sort of framing that issue. Sticking with sort of the early career issues, Krystal, do you have advice that you would have given yourself in the first few years of your career?
Definitely. And this is I'm back to what Samira was talking about earlier about, not wanting to talk about yourself and not wanting to share what value you bring to the table. I think I always tell young lawyers that, because when I went in, I started at a corporate boutique law firm here in Houston, my career, and it was heads down, head down, do my work, my work will speak for itself. It's about the performance only. And really what you come to learn is that that's not enough to really elevate you. And so I would say you begin to build your brand. I should have started to build my brand at the time. And what I mean by that is really figuring out, for one, what my story is. What is my value proposition? What do I bring to the table? What sets me apart from everybody else in this firm, in this corporation, wherever I am, right? And so, of course, you have to perform. That's going to come. I feel like we're all capable. We're all intellectual. We've done the work. We're there. We're in the room. So that part's going to come. But there's another piece of it. And there's this framework. I do a lot of things off of frameworks. There's this framework called the PI framework, and it's performance, image, exposure, right? That's how you build a brand. And so the performance piece, we talked about that. You go in, you do the work, you work hard. If you have great work product, you're going to get the accolades for the great performance. But the pieces that are missing when you first start out are that image piece. And that doesn't just mean how you dress, your makeup, the ruby woo, all of that. That part is great, because it does actually, people do pay attention to it because they see that before they even get to know you. But it's also, again, what is it I'm bringing to the table that nobody else can bring in wherever I am, right? And the exposure piece of it that people also, especially lawyers, feel like it's not that important is how many people have visibility of what it is that I'm doing and how I'm doing it. Because believe it or not, like, that's how you get sponsors. That's how people, you're able to make lateral moves when you're ready to make those moves, because that's what the brand is all about. People are taught this, what they talk about when you're not in the room. That really makes the difference. So that's one thing. The other thing is what I also tell young lawyers, and I would have told myself, and that is to be the CEO of your own career, right? And what I mean by that is that if you see that you're not getting answers, or you're not really learning about the business, or you're not even learning what you need to do for your craft, then you have to seek that out. You have to ask as many questions as possible. And I say not just even about to understand like the technical side of it, right? But how does this small sliver of what it is that you're doing really contribute to the big picture? Because another thing that women, and especially I'll say women of color, don't know or don't do is I always say they don't get the keys. And what I mean by that, right, that's a rap lyric, right? But they don't get the keys, meaning they don't understand how this business even operates. How does the firm world operate? How do corporate legal departments operate? How should I operate if I'm a solo practitioner? What do I need to be doing? And so waiting until the 5th, 6th, 7th year, and even then a lot of them don't know, or a lot of us don't know. I say you can be learning that along the way as well as learning your craft. So that's really, I think those are the things definitely I would tell myself as a young lawyer.
And did you find that those kind of personal relationships that you were talking about before were a useful way to help learn about sort of the business of where you were, or the kind of sort of larger structure issues that you were?
Definitely. Since I was young, I've always been innately curious. And so, you know, again, me talking about these leaders as untouchable figures, I've always been the person that goes into whoever's at the top, right, everywhere that I've been, and to sit down and ask the questions that I want to have answered. When I first started at that corporate, corporate boutique firm, the partner over that firm, he said, look, you're never going to start a deal until you understand this client's business, right? You need to understand how they're trying to grow or what they're trying to achieve within their business before you can even handle this deal. So yes, you're going to be doing these contracts and all of this, and this plays a part of it, but you need to understand why you're doing the contract. You need to start with that. And so it's the same thing that I've done really throughout my career, talking to people to understand the why.
And sort of the flip side of branding can also sort of be stereotypes of what others think your brand should be, right? Starting off with you, Samira, have you found yourself in situations where you're expected to conform to stereotypical notions of sort of how a woman should be or act? And can you maybe share some examples of any time you made a decision to depart from that?
Yeah, so, interestingly, I find myself less in these types of situations than I did way early on my career. I think, perhaps it's just more experience, age, you're more conscious of your behavior and others' behavior. So I think that all that contributes to the fact that you're just not going to put up with it, right? And so there was an example, and I remember this so vividly. About 5-6 years ago, there was a project in which I had very little experience in, but I definitely wanted to gain that experience. And so noticing my interest, my manager at the time asked that I get involved in the project and review a few things. The local team lead, a male, was told to include me in the discussions and meetings and to involve me. And I guess I was just expected to just sit in and listen, not to actually share any thoughts or feedback or my concerns, because again, I was one coming in with very little experience, but still had a brain, right? So I wanted to provide feedback and comments. A few weeks later, after multiple meetings, the team lead called me in his office and basically told me I shouldn't be involved in the project. I knew nothing of the subject matter and I should just sit and listen. This is me as legal counsel of a corporate department being asked to come in and not say a word and just to sit there. I was so upset. And that was the first time I actually cried at work. Part of it was the embarrassment. The other part of it, I was just so angry. I was so angry. And at the time, I didn't do anything. I walked away, just went into my office and cried. Gave myself some time. And then after that, I did have a conversation with him. I addressed the way he had spoken to me. I addressed how when being asked to join a project, I will speak up. That's just who I am. That's my role. And if I've made a mistake, I'm completely open to hearing his feedback as well, or if he disagrees with me, but again, in a respectful, collaborative manner. And again, since then, he has apologized multiple times. We still work together. He's great. But I don't think he realized the way he was behaving. But I did take that as an opportunity to educate him and really help him understand how I felt and how his comments made me feel.
Thank you. Tiffany, let's turn to you. Sort of same question. If you have another anecdote to share along the same lines. And you're on mute again.
Go, me and this mute button, right? So my example, so the answer is yes, I've experienced this, but I can proudly say that I have not experienced what I'm about to explain to you guys in my current role or in any of the situations I've been in my last 2 positions. We have a very diverse workforce at the Harris County Attorney's Office. And so I'm going to spin it just a little bit. I have a very deep voice for a woman, right? And my mom has a deep voice and all of my aunties as well. And when I was younger as a lawyer, I would find that people would find me to be angry or aggressive with this voice. And so if I were in a meeting and I had a differing opinion, it was, Tiffany, you don't have to be so angry. I'm not angry. This is how I talk. So I found myself changing my voice just a little bit, being a little more sweeter, you know, so I could be more palatable to people who didn't understand my natural speech. And I found myself having a conversation with a person that would always say, hey, don't be so angry. We went to lunch one day, and it was a male colleague at a different employer. And I shared with him how it was draining on me to have to make other people comfortable with what is natural to me, and that I would not be doing it anymore. And that unless I told you I was angry, most people don't know when I'm angry anyway, right? But unless I told you I was angry, or I made you aware of it, that please don't categorize me as angry. I want to give you a second example. A lot of people are visual, and I have always been plus size, and I don't like the term plus size, which is, you know, just how I'm made. That's another thing about me. I tell my mom, I'm just more to love. That's what it is, in my opinion. And so often people, unfortunately, if you're overweight or if you are plus size, a lot of people discount your intelligence, and they discount your right to have a place at the table. And so again, at one of these earlier jobs I worked at, I was told, we're going to send you to the gym because we need our clients to be able to look at you and see someone that is more representative of our firm. So I looked around the firm, and not only was I the only Black lawyer at the time, I was the only female lawyer at the time. And every other woman at the office was a paralegal or an admin, and they were all very thin. And I experienced that even when I left that firm. And so already being a person living in this body, you know, you have your own issues. And so what I did to overcome that was basically present myself in a way wherein when I walk in a room, I make some people uncomfortable because my confidence level is through the roof. And so what you see is what you get with me. And I'm going to be my whole person when I walk through that room unapologetically. And so some people have asked me, you know, Tiffany, where you buy your clothes? They fit so well, or well, great. I'm glad you like it. I'll share with you after the meeting, or I'll share this with you. And I've heard from some of my current staff that in the judiciary, that some of us, well, all of the lawyers that I manage are trial attorneys, and some of them have a different approach to trial, right? And so some of them are very aggressive. Some of them are very, you know, kind and nice, but the ones that are more aggressive, they often get a negative reaction from the judiciary. It's like, why don't you, hey, calm down. Their objections aren't always, you know, granted. Sometimes they're overruled unnecessarily. And so we have to build them back up, because naturally, again, some people's voices are very deep. Some people's strategy is to be aggressive, and women are often thought to well, maybe chastise a bit more for having that aggressive approach where a man would not be. So all of those things I've experienced, but the way that I overcome them is just to continue to be myself unapologetically. And that's what I encourage our young lawyers on our teams to do. Our interns, as they come through and they learn from us, we encourage them to be themselves in every opportunity and to bring their whole self to the table. That's what we do in that situation.
Thank you, Tiffany. That transitions really well into our next topic, which was authenticity. And it's just incredible that you can't kind of imagine anything being forced to be more inauthentic than to change your voice or to even be asked to change your body. That's incredible. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. Krystal, is there a balance to be struck, or have you ever had to deal with the balance between being your true authentic self, like Tiffany was just describing in the workplace, versus sort of getting the job done?
Yeah, we often talk about, you know, and then Tiffany just talked about bringing our whole selves to work, right? and I'm definitely for it. But what I will say is that your whole self to work, to me, it doesn't have to be 100% of you. And what I mean by that is that we're multifaceted people, right? There are different facets to us. So whether I bring you one facet or another, it's still me being me, right? You're still seeing Krystal. And so what one of my mentors always says, right? And she's a well-known thought leader, speaker, author. She always says, know your audience and know your setting, right? So there's a time, and what my grandma would say, there's a time and place for everything, right? And so depending on the setting, depending on the audience, depending on what I'm doing, you may get a different facet of Krystal, right? So who my friends get, the Krystal that my friends get when we're all having a glass of wine might not be the Krystal that the CEO and the COO of Blank Room get, right? But it doesn't mean that it's any less Krystal. They're just getting a different facet of me. The same thing when I'm, doing in my role as executive director of the downtown group, as that leader, they may be getting another facet of me, right? But they're all parts of who I am. And so it doesn't separate me or disconnect me or make me be disingenuous. It's still Krystal when you look at it, so that's the way that I would say. So I think getting the job done by whatever means necessary, you can still be authentic without, just by presenting different facets of yourself based on the audience and the setting.
I'm going to jump in one more time to give the CLE number as requested. So again, that's 174-111-214, and it's also in the chat for you guys to get CLE credit. And so Tiffany, does that, is what Krystal's describing sort of consistent with how you feel now, and that you can be your whole self at work, and sort of how you navigate that now that you're past those horrible kind of early experiences that you were telling us about?
Oh, absolutely. Krystal hit the nail on the head for me that I, probably similar experiences, right? That not only grandma, but mom and aunties, the whole family expresses, there's a time and a place for everything. You meet me at karaoke, you say, Tiffany knows that song? You're like, yeah, I will surprise you. You know what I mean? But when I'm talking to my boss, the new county attorney, Christian Menifee, I am giving, yes, claps, right? I'm giving a different Tiffany, right? And not that Tiffany has all these different personalities, but there are different components to one personality, right? And so when I am talking to Glenda on a Saturday, as opposed to talking to Glenda in my office on a Monday morning when we're discussing a case, there is a navigation of duties and skills that we that we can easily separate. So I'm being my whole person at work, but let's express it a bit differently though for some of the young people in the audience, or the young lawyers in the audience. So you see my hair. This is how my hair grows out of my head. For a very long time, I didn't feel comfortable wearing my hair the way that it grows out of my head, right? And so part of being my whole self at work really showed up when I was an employee for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, where I worked for an African-American managing attorney, and she was female. And I felt very comfortable to stop relaxing my hair, putting chemicals in it to make it straight so that I was presentable in court. And I started wearing my hair curly. And today it's a bit more tame. Sometimes people who know me will say it's huge, but I began to feel comfortable to do that where I had not been comfortable before. And that is part of bringing your whole self to work. In addition, for the first time, as an attorney, I wore braids in my hair, which is, for some people are Tiffany, they're just braids, but that's a big deal for somebody in my age group for the year I graduated from law school, because that was not an acceptable practice. It was not a professional hairstyle. And so working in a place that allows you to embrace your culture, that allows you to embrace the hairstyles of your culture, and still understand that you are a professional in their business is also freedom for a lot of women. And so currently in my current role, I feel very free to do that. Now, my own personal preference, similar to, Krystal, in different settings, my hair may look different ways. I may look different ways, even down to the ability to wear, cultural patterns, or, or deviate from the blue suits and black suits to, maybe having a print or something that is culturally significant for me. For a long time, that was not an acceptable practice for women. And so at this point, I do feel comfortable to do that at work. We encourage people to do that in our office as a part of being their whole selves at work. Sometimes we do have to talk to people, though, about what they wear to work, and bringing their whole selves to work, right? And we might have to correct some of those things in terms of fit. But yes, navigating it was just a matter of kind of living long enough to see the practice of law change. I'm also old enough to be someone who can attest to a time when you couldn't wear pants to the courthouse, right? And you couldn't wear open-toe shoes to the courthouse, or sandals. You had to wear pantyhose, right? And so having that be an option as opposed to something you have to do shows that our field is turning away from those male-dominated thought processes on how women should present and the feminism that we should present in court as a whole person with. So letting us define what bringing our whole selves to work is so very important as well. And so just navigating it, I just had to live through it.
Yeah, it's really great that your department is so supportive in that way. Talking about sort of promoting equality in the workplace, Krystal, what diversity inclusion initiatives have you seen done well that the audience could think about encouraging in their workplaces?
Sure, and I know we're getting low on time, and I see Agape coming on, so I'm going to try to make this brief. I always talk about the power of the pipeline, right? Pipeline development. When I started diversity, equity, and inclusion work for a nonprofit called Management Leadership of Tomorrow, we really focused on, trying to develop talented and gifted and high-performing senior high school students of color. And so going back to that level, I think sometimes we go to the university level, we go to the law school level, but going back to the high school level and really exposing them to different areas of business, different areas of law, at an early age, to get their time where they're very malleable, to get them thinking about different career paths, as well as other areas or other ways that you can use your JD or use your license. I think that is so critical, and that has been, very helpful for the folks that I worked with, especially through that program. There are students that have actually decided to change their career path based off of what they learned during that time. So it's something that I would say that you can basically replicate, going back and starting really at that level. I feel like that's the level where people begin to decide what it is that you want to do. And the more exposure you have, the more options you have. So pipeline development.
Great. And on sort of the sort of personal level, I guess, on how that pipeline is developed, Samira, what is the most supportive thing someone has done for you in your career?
Yeah, I'm also conscious of time, so I will be brief. You know what? A former manager of mine actually gave me the confidence, right? So he would always promote me, always tell me that he believed in me, gave me the opportunity to lead, which basically, he gave me confidence in my work. He consistently told me I'm the expert. So that really, really helps, right? So that confidence from your managers, that really builds you up. And it just, for me, particularly allowed me to venture out, try things that I haven't tried before. And I think that's probably the best thing as leaders. What we can do is to give confidence to others, especially women, because we just need that. We need to be built up and so that we can try new things and take on more leadership roles.
And I'll just piggyback off of Samira because I mean, you know, for the same thing, it was the same thing for me, that the CEO that I worked for at Music World, he believed in me as well when nobody else did, but he also invested in my development. In the areas where he felt that I was weak, he helped to build those up and to strengthen those areas. So I would add that. And then also he helped me to realize that what I considered my quirks or my idiosyncrasies, how they really are my superpowers. And so I think being able to leverage that and learning how to leverage that from him has been, you know, very, very helpful. So.
Terrific. Well, I know we have a few questions that have come in through the chat and the Q&A, but I think we need to take a few minutes for the sponsor actually to this event, if I'm correct, Agape. So maybe we should switch over to that now, and then if folks can stick around for a little bit of Q&A, then maybe we can get to that too.
Robin, when you're ready.
Hi guys, good morning. My name is Robin Lalone and I'm the Marketing and Philanthropic Manager for Kendra Scott here in Houston. I jumped on a few minutes early and everything you guys are saying is perfectly in line with what I'm about to kick off for you guys. This weekend, you guys are partnering with us in honor of International Women's Day and Women's History Month. So right after my little presentation here, I'm going to be dropping all of the information into the chat that I believe Ms. Glenda has also shared with you guys. And we have some fun raffle prizes to announce. So to kick this off, I'm going to share with you guys our lucky raffle winners. You guys do need to be present on the call to win. So please unmute your mic or clap or wave if you guys are here, and we'll take note of your address and put some fun jewels in the mail for you guys. So the first lucky winner that we've selected today is Miss Fields. Miss Fields, are you on the call this morning? Glenda, you can help keep me honest here if you're seeing them or if you're seeing them pop up on the side for my camera here. Perfect.
She is on the call.
Amazing. And then our other two winners that we have are Miss Jonetta Fields. Is that the same Mrs. Fields, Miss Glenda?
Oh yeah, it's the same Fields, sorry.
Okay, so then the second one is Miss Jacqueline Del Villar. Miss Jacqueline, are you on today?
I do not see Jacqueline.
Okay, we're going down the list. Miss Yvonne. Miss Yvonne, are you on the call this morning?
Miss Yvonne is on the call.
Awesome. Congratulations to our lucky winners. You guys are getting some gorgeous spring styles from Kendra Scott. One of the things that I wanted to tell you guys about this morning that is so exciting is the fact that this fundraiser is virtual. So if you guys are not ready to come out in the community, if you guys don't want to pop into the store yet, we have a 2-day web code that you guys will be able to use at kendrascott.com, with 20% of those proceeds going back to the Houston Young Lawyers Association. So we're so excited to be supporting you guys. This weekend specifically, we have a very special give back opportunity in partnership with the Women's Entrepreneur and Leadership Program at University of Texas. This is actually a program that Kendra started. It's called the Welly Institute. And we have an assortment of bracelets on the website that on top of supporting your organization, 20% will also go back to the Welly Institute and help to sponsor some scholarships going through University of Texas. So thank you guys for letting me pop on. I'm gonna drop all of this information into the chat for you guys, as well as some of my favorite styles as you guys are clicking around for jewels or maybe a jewelry box as y'all get organized for spring and summer. We would love to have you guys on the web or in our Highland Village store this weekend. So thank you guys for letting me pop on. Enjoy your yellow boxes. And thank you for all you guys are doing for the community. We are so grateful for you guys. And thanks for celebrating International Women's Day with us. Happy Friday, everyone.
Thanks, Robin. Great. Well, we had a couple of questions from the chat that I'll just throw out to the whole group. Someone asked, is there a point when a meeting or a conversation just is clearly not constructive because someone is dismissing your concerns or sort of not paying attention to some of the things we've talked about, speaking to colleagues or others? Is there a time when that just becomes too toxic or just should be ended? Any thoughts on that?
I would say absolutely. There and it's based on your comfort level, right? That having difficult conversations is an art, and in terms of if you have it naturally, you can learn it. But even having difficult conversations, sometimes you need to say, you know what, let's table this. Let's agree to disagree at this moment. and then maybe come back to it on a different day. Cooler heads always prevail, in my opinion. And sometimes in that cooling off period, you can determine whether or not having the conversation is worth the potential outcome. So I think you do a risk assessment in that instance, but I'll turn it over to the other attorneys on the presentation.
I agree with Tiffany. Being a litigator, you know, sitting in and listening, right? You know how it's already starting off on a high tone already as a litigator. So it's kind of the two bulls in the room. But yes, I think that time is money, obviously, and you're not sitting around just trying to be in a toxic environment if you don't need to be. So you're there for a purpose. What is it? What's going on? What are the exchange of ideas? But if it gets to a point where it just feels like this is not productive of our time, like you said, table it, and maybe we'll come back to it at another time when everybody's cooler. So I agree.
And I would just add, let me add this last point, make sure that you're hearing what's being said though, because I've had some very tough bosses and some tough characters that I have dealt with, but what they're telling me, although I may be taking it personally because it is critical, you know, feedback, it actually has been for my good and helped to develop me. And so coming from a military household, I'm very used to getting that anyway. And so just make sure that you're hearing what's being said and not taking your feelings out of the equation.
Correct. Because hearing is one thing, right, Tiff? And then, or Krystal, and also knowing what your position is as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I'm sorry, and just to piggyback off of those two comments, a big part of communication is listening.
Right.
Right. And so the best skill that you have in your disposal is listening. So like Krystal saying, and Attorney Nguyen is saying, you've got to be able to, as being part of the conversation, not listen just to respond.
Yeah. And we had two other questions that are a little more general, but on the same topic of interviews. So if any of the panelists have sort of thoughts or feedback on if there are ways to go into an interview maybe where you don't have the experience that's being specifically asked for, or you maybe didn't do so well in the class that's the subject matter of the job that you're going through. If there are sort of weaknesses in what you think your presentation is for an interview, do you have any recommendations on sort of getting over that or dealing with that situation?
Honestly, I don't know if I quite understand the question. I'm just gonna be honest.
So I was going to try to give my best answer without having full clarity, and that is that of course you're gonna lead with your best foot, right? So if I didn't do well in a class, or if I'm weak in a certain area, I'm not going to highlight that area. It goes to what I was talking about earlier. It's understanding what is the value that I'm bringing, right? So if there is a certain class that I did take, or if I did well in contracts, but maybe I didn't do well in criminal law, let me talk to you about, you know, the nature of that and what I learned from that and what I can bring to the table here. And so it's really just finding those selling points and finding what value you do bring and leaving the rest of it out of it. Now, those questions may be still asked in your interview, right, about what your weaknesses are. And so you should at least, you know, at that point now acknowledge what that is, but spin it to show that although this is a weakness, you know, I'm willing to either learn from it, or, you know, this weakness can be turned into a strength. So you're still flipping it back to where it's going to be a highlight.
Terrific. Well, that was all the questions that came in. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you for having us. I've enjoyed the conversation. Everyone have a great weekend.
Thank you to my panelists too. Thank you for the privilege.
Bye. Thank you.
And again, the CLE number and all the sponsor information that Robin was talking about are all in the chat.
Thank you guys. It was wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.